one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
I like that, Phyllis.
Why not that? Glad to see Phyllis actually made it on time tonight. All right, that's done. Let's go over the meeting minutes. Do everybody have a chance to review them?
Yes.
Any comments on the May 28th, the June 25th, or the July 8th?
Meeting was the one you fixed.
They were, I don't remember that one.
It's the main one.
The May one. That's why it's still here. It was corrected.
Okay. I make a motion that we accept and approve the minutes as stated.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting minutes. All right. Special events. Kevin Nearing is not able to make it tonight, so. Did everybody get a chance to review the special events ordinance?
Yes.
Any comments, questions? I can tell you the biggest one is going to be about enforcement, and we only have Sean as code enforcement, and I don't know what his pipeline and bandwidth is to support processing.
It's available.
Yes. Applications or anything like that. So I was hoping everybody would be here tonight so we could discuss those, because that's the biggest issue on both of these that I've seen, is if we do this for public safety concerns, how do we process them? They come and get an application and all the packets from Shahana when she's here, fill it up, submit it to Sean. Sean does his magic, explains the paperwork and processing it.
Well, we should really get his input before we do anything with it.
I've emailed him and he was supposed to be here,
And we
and
haven't gotten anything
I
back.
have not heard anything. So Monday, I won't be here next week. Are you able to come and talk to him on Monday?
If need be.
Yeah, just come and ask him what's his thought process on these two ordinances. He has the soft copies about enforcement, and
CC me on those emails.
you're on all of them. He's on all the same emails. When we send these out, he gets them. That's the only thing. If you could come by and just chat with him and say, what's your thought process on this?
I have one question about that.
Yes.
Is that during the months of like heavy things, like July 4th, Memorial Day, Labor Day, and stuff like that, when there are a number of different events that will be happening at the same time, if there's a possibility that Sean cannot go ahead and get to each and every one of these things, would there be a designated person to go out and like check?
A backup.
A backup, yeah.
That's
Check
what
it.
we have to figure out if we need to do that. A lot of the other townships that I've done research on, they have their code enforcement, and they also have a township manager or somebody that is appointed
Okay.
as a volunteer to support them with
Okay.
processing and coordinating and doing all that.
All right, that's all part of
It-
what we
it-
want to
it-
ask Sean.
We want to ask Sean what's his thought process on this as far as code enforcement and how
Okay.
we're going to do that. Those are the biggest issues that I have. And
Oh, we need his input one way or another. If he says he can't get to things in a timely fashion, and then when you're saying enforcement too, after everything's all signed off and the guidelines aren't followed, I mean, depending on the severity, PSP or local enforcement, law enforcement. I mean, I know from past experience here, everybody complains about PSP and response. But if there's something that's really, really, really bad happening, I've seen PSP, the sheriff, they'll pull a school resource officer if need be, if school was in session. BATF, the C-Spot run, ICE, the whole alphabet soup screaming down the road. So, but I mean, that's usually something very severe, not like an event. I mean, if an event gets out of hand to where it was that bad, if somebody called 911, law enforcement would come out.
So you're talking about an event in progress?
Yeah, like if,
Well, if there's an event in progress, we should have all those things covered just simply because of
It should be properly
checklist.
coordinated. They'll already know it's ongoing based on these
long-
checklists.
Yeah, okay.
The actual event host has to follow the process and coordinate with EMS, fire, safety, and police. So they would know what's going on, how many people, all that stuff. So, we also, as far as the fireworks, when I sent the application, and Tony did a great job reviewing it, there's a checklist and a hold harmless agreement that they all have to fill out as part of their package, that they hold the township harmless if they follow the process. So,
What's your take on this, Mr. Solicitor, sir?
Well, special events, we'll start with that since you raised it first. A lot of municipalities have special events permits that are issued by code enforcement. The issue always, and always is going to be, you can pass any type of rules that you want. The issue is always going to be enforcement. Who's going to enforce an event that maybe isn't permitted or goes beyond the confines of a permit? Township has very limited resources, most municipalities do. So, this is a good idea. It's nice to make people come in and get a permit for their special event, understand that they need to coordinate with other groups if necessary, if the event's large enough. But enforcement is the one and only issue, as I gave to you in my email.
yeah, we understand that's going to be an issue, especially with limited resources. But, yes, Phyllis?
Does a special event include a car wash in the parking lot of this building? Would that be, when somebody applies to do like
If they were going
a
to do
cookie sale or something in our parking lot here?
if it's going to be on township property, that would be a special event.
Yeah.
And usually people who are intending to do that will make an application here because we're looking for insurance and so forth, right?
Right, and presently the process is that if someone wants to hold or conduct an event or to use the building or any other township property, that they would make an application, usually through the secretary or the zoning officer. They would supply a certificate of insurance, and it would be approved or disapproved or
That's a pretty
changed
routine
by
matter
the
at this
board
point
of
in
supervisors.
time, right?
Right.
That's nothing new.
Right. And that's the way it's been handled in the past, that the applicant, that someone that wants to use a township facility such as this room, for instance, that's what most of the applications are for this room or for
Something
the
in the
confines out in the parking lot, okay? And, it seems to work. Does it work 100% of the time? No, because we sometimes there'll be events that people forget to contact us, and it'll be between meetings and they can't get approval, and they'll just say, well, we could
I
do
thought
anything
it
about it.
seemed pretty routine. No,
Right.
we're not surprised to have somebody show up.
And then you have larger events, but those are usually the events that we have every year. There's a 5K run that actually starts in our adjoining township and ends in our township. That is every June. They come in, and the groups that have the events each year, they'll come in early in the season and they'll get their permits.
Get on the calendar.
But this is very difficult because your code enforcement officer, who would have to be responsible for making sure that everything required is taken care of in the ordinance, has limited hours. And
Yeah.
and that's it.
Well, if we go and talk to Sean, we'll figure
Yeah.
out a couple things. Quick question for Sean and you as the historical knowledge. Does Sean do an annual report like we're required to do? Do a roll-up, how many?
I have not seen one, okay? Whether he does one, I don't know. I think he generates, and I don't want to answer this if I'm wrong, okay? Does the computer generate an end-of-year permit manager? Is there like cumulative for all the permits issued during the year?
How many jobs, how many permits, how many different types of permits he did?
Do you know?
Yes, it does generate some permits, like,
Not
But does it-
summary.
But does it generate like a summary report?
Like 100 permits done in a year, 25 for construction, 30
I
were
can check
this,
on
yeah.
that.
I think permit manager might be capable of doing that. I know the zoning software certainly should be capable of doing that.
Okay. I just like to analyze statistics, I don't know why, keeps me happy. The other question I have, we were talking earlier, this meeting is on Tuesday. Do you know the history of why it was on Tuesday?
No, I do not.
And
It was on Tuesday long before I was here.
And we've advertised Tuesday all the way through the end of the year. Is there any way to, next year, adjust it to Monday?
That will be up to the members of the planning
Okay,
commission.
we just want to make sure that, I don't
As
know.
long as it doesn't conflict with township, with other use of the building. In other words, you couldn't have it on the first and third Monday.
Yeah, we don't want to.
Or when- Right, right.
Well,
I mean, honestly, some planning commissions have, that do a workshop at a meeting.
mhm.
Some of the planning, they'll have their workshop during the day.
Yeah, well, we've seen that locally.
Yeah.
Okay. No, Mondays just make more sense. You know, everything's on a Monday, then you don't have to, oh yeah, that's the last Tuesday of the month, we have to go.
No, maybe Monday would make more sense probably for you guys, but it wouldn't for me.
Oh, you're already busy on Monday?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. The only Monday I would have available.
Well, what would that be, during the day when there's a supervisor's meeting at night? Is that the way you could work?
I don't know.
No, we would, the supervisors would do the first and third Mondays, we would have to do the second and fourth.
I would not be available in the second one.
Well, I shot that.
If everything stays the same way as it is now, I wouldn't be available because the first Monday I have a meeting, township meeting.
okay.
And the
Well,
fourth Monday
our
I have
first
school
meeting of
board.
the month would be his workshop.
Yeah, his workshop is the first one. You see, he doesn't come to those anyway. He doesn't like the workshops.
No, at the same time as my township.
All right. All right, so for the two ordinances, you're gonna talk to Sean on Monday?
Yeah.
If you come
Can I
in.
throw one more question in
Yes, sir.
there? That
Special events?
special events with regard to event management, would it be beneficial to have like a projected size amount and then requirement for additional personnel for like people over 75 people or something like that?
I don't know, it's real hard.
I know that it's hard, and
Yeah.
I'm just throwing it out there just in case it's a question floating in the universe. I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that we address everything.
You know, personal experience with any of these events, I mean, we used to run events for the Scouts and for the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and I was involved in that a long time ago. And, you know, it varies from year to year. You might have 25 people show up one year at an event, you might have hundreds the next year. You just don't, there's no way to gauge that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's built
Yeah.
into
So it's really hard to,
Well, most of our events in the township, actually, like concerning the building here, is usually like charitable groups or
Right.
school kids.
Right.
And not half, all the time, they waive the permit fee as long as they provide the hold harmless and the certificate of insurance. Because it's good causes and they're small and they're beneficial. This is, I think, it's just more outlined towards a bigger event where the possibility of.
like the fun
A
run
great
they won
run.
in January. They were talking about the run. That's what it's more focused on.
Yeah.
Those
With
new
more.
runs that are popping up that require certain things. Quick question, you made me think of something, thank you for that. I know, I'll give you credit for that. We do these, he was talking about all these events that the supervisors approve. Are we tracking those on an annual basis? How many we have that are already set on the schedule? How many are like roughly a year we have? Or reoccurring is the word I was looking for.
you could probably look through the minutes year by year to see which ones are reoccurring, because they're all approved at the meeting.
You said something about software where we could get a year-end report, and you can even do quarterly
Well,
and monthly.
permit, the zoning officer has a program that I think is called Permit Manager. And I'm going back a few years, but Permit Manager used to be able to give you a year-end summary. And that summary would be the number of permits you issued, and in a general category, what they were for, whether it was a structure or whether it was
Well, you
a
could go in
shed,
and-
a remodel, yeah. So I
You could
think the
keyword it.
capability is there, I just don't know if it's done or not.
It's never-
Well, we don't know in the past if their business process was to do that, was to account.
I don't know if they have a manual report.
It's just a better way to track things.
Well, yeah, if you can't track, measure, and monitor, you don't know what your workload is.
Now, I don't know if, see, because there's zoning permits that are issued, and there's sign permits that are issued.
Correct.
I don't think the sign permits are tracked,
But that would be something that,
because I don't think they're done off the permit manager.
oh, so it's nothing you could add into permit manager to track?
You have to ask Sean,
Okay.
but I know that there should be a capability in that software to at least track, to give you a summary of how many permits were issued and what they were for.
Yeah, it goes back to the question, the last planning board, I asked where are the annual reports, and they're like, there aren't any.
There's no annual reports that I'm aware of.
And that's part of the structure that we have to do, and I'm assuming that everybody should be able to roll it up into one annual report, brief the supervisors and the public, and life is good. Then they know where we're at, we can then grow from there and adjust. All right.
I mean, the commission in the past only met when there was something on the agenda, or when there was a need for them to review something in the ordinance. It wasn't, even though it was a monthly meeting, many of the meetings were not held because there was nothing on the agenda.
Which is typical.
Yeah, which is typical of most townships. If there's nothing, no business pending,
Yeah.
there's no meeting.
You don't need to have a meeting, you don't have a meeting.
No, but when you read all the requirements for the planning, and you don't have meetings, then you don't do the annual report. It's slightly a huge knock-on effect, and that's what we've inherited. All right, any other comments on these two?
I think I'm commented out.
The rest of the night off.
Can we,
Let's do your
ask
county
questions
corner.
now?
Good?
I'm good.
All right, county corner? No, we're gonna get to public participation at the end,
Oh.
Rachel. County corner, do we have anything up at the county that I can recall? I know we had the zoning, right?
Yeah, it's only,
All right, but,
We haven't heard back on anything.
no,
to my knowledge.
that's the only thing that's pending. We don't owe them anything, and they don't owe us anything other than that.
We owe them nothing, except the supervisors probably owe them a copy of the kennel ordinance after they signed it, if they did sign it.
Did they sign
Of
it?
what?
The kennel ordinance, that the supervisor signed the ordinance
Oh,
after the meeting.
They should have
They
signed it.
approved it, but I don't know if they signed it.
oh, okay.
If you
So,
could check to see if they signed it.
If you could check and have them sign it at the next meeting, and then you have to send a copy to Mike Brzezinski at
Okay.
Kingdom Plan. And also a copy of the county law library, even though it doesn't exist.
The kennel amendment. All right.
Just send it in care of Pike County Law Library at Corridor.
Is County Corner an official name for something?
It's what I'm calling it. It's where we have a talk about anything that we have ongoing with the county, things we owe them, things they owe us, so we
Okay.
all
To my
know.
knowledge, there's nothing outstanding other than the zoning amendment.
And it's all up, it's on the master tracker that I have to send to Shahana, which I gotta make a note. So that's,
I did have, and I don't know if you wanted me to discuss this now or not, I did have a couple comments on the fireworks. Okay. My primary comment on fireworks, other than, I saw you made corrections based on the email I sent, but
yep,
primary comment is that I think we still need to make sure that code enforcement person and the fire chief are given ample opportunity to review a site for large display fireworks. Presently, it says 24-hour notice. I really think that should be 48 or 72.
I'm gonna go 72 hours.
Yeah, because it's not fair, it's not fair to...
Well, with the coordination and everything
Right.
too.
It's not fair to call the fire chief Thursday night saying, hey, tomorrow night...
Tomorrow, we're doing
doing
this.
fireworks.
72
I would put a week.
I don't know you need a week, because they're usually set up at the last minute, but 72 hours should be...
Well, the one that was done in the township on the 4th of July was talked about since April.
Yeah,
So they have plenty of time.
Yes,
yeah.
check out the physical setup. or
Right,
have
because
a
he's
clock
got,
drawn at
he's got to
least.
check the physical.
The setup and then where the drop zone is and everything like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, 72 hours.
So that was one, and then, of course, the other comment was that the last sentence in
Yeah.
consumer fireworks, C2 should be taken out, because that's
the
not
one we talked about.
actually part of the statute.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
What is that, what part?
C2 on page
Pages.
5. The last sentence, Class C or consumer grade fireworks, that is not in the statute. It does not differentiate anymore. It just says ground and handheld sparkling and display.
So you're
That's
saying
one-
remove
Yep.
the
That's
whole
one of the
number
changes,
two?
that's one of the changes to the 2017 law that the fireworks people were very excited about until they figured out what it meant.
And Pat has got those, he'll make those adjustments.
So you're saying take out this whole,
Yeah, that
Yeah.
sentence has to come out,
The
that's
whole
not,
one.
not actually part of it. Just this one.
oh,
Yeah.
So when you meet with Sean, ask him about
ask them about
enforcement.
this too.
Oh, yeah.
And those were my only comments on
So
that.
72 hours is good for them.
72 hours makes sense.
Yeah,
I live in a faster paced world where everything has to be done quicker, but I understand that.
and I think you already made a change to
Yep.
the amount, the 50,000.
Right.
Yeah, because that's what the requirement, 50,000. Have you had any discussions at your workshops regarding the impact of the fireworks ordinance? Okay.
No, you're still just working through this and
Okay.
tabletopping it. It'll be on the next agenda to talk after the comprehensive plan. So,
Good. That's it for
Can a
me.
fireworks display be refused because of a noise ordinance or anything like that?
Fireworks display can be refused for many reasons. They're all set forth in the fireworks.
In this little,
Yeah.
All right, public participation discussion. Yes, ma'am.
Erica Burnett. I missed the workshop meeting 2 weeks ago, and my mom told me that you handed out like not maybe a comment, or you were looking for public input for the,
talking about this.
yeah, maybe that, for the comprehensive plan, ideas.
What it basically said, this is our outline of what we're doing. We divvied up who's going to run what section.
Right.
At our next meeting, we're going to have a kickoff meeting about how they're going to run their sections and look for township residents to join their focus groups. And then they will run their focus groups and gather information from that. And then a month later, the next workshop, they'll come back in. They'll talk about what they did with their focus groups, who was involved, any survey questions that came out of that, and that'll be all tabulated and rolled up. And every month, we'll keep doing that until we get to a place where we have a draft document that we're happy with, that we can then send over to supervisors to get their thoughts and go from there. And the total timeline, I'm still building, and that'll be part of the kickoff meeting on the next workshop,
Okay.
which is August, right? We're still in July?
August 12th.
Yeah, I thought it was something to do with the 12th.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I get back on that. All right.
Can I ask a question in relation to this?
Sure.
In relation to that?
To Eric's point? Okay.
Yeah, in general. Are we still looking to amend and update our comprehensive plan together with the borough or independently?
we're doing ours, that's the charter we have, is to work on ours as a township. When we get done with it and get to a point where we have a draft, the supervisors can decide what they want to do and how they want to handle it, once it's presented to them.
So we're working on our townships.
Our baseline, yeah.
Independently.
Yeah.
Do you know if the borough is working on theirs, or we don't know?
To be honest, I don't think they've started.
They have not.
I've been to their meetings and I haven't heard anything about that.
There you go, like I don't have that.
Go, okay.
Answer that for you, fellas?
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, is that only for township residents?
The comprehensive plan, we're looking for township residents as part of our focus groups in our study.
Now, my family does own property in Milford Township. Would that allow me to participate?
I would have to talk to,
That's strictly up to the commission. I mean, that's.
we'll have to wait
If
till
you're
the other two are back.
if you're gonna have an open focus group, then
Yeah.
are these meetings gonna be like workshop meetings, or
What do you mean, like workshop?
are you gonna have them here, open to the public?
They can, when you're on a, no, as far as open to the public, when you're on a focus group and you have that assignment, they'll get the focus group and volunteers, they can meet here or wherever. If anybody wants to attend, they could, but they're just discussing.
So is there a specific person in charge of each of these
Correct.
parts?
That's what we divvied up last time. And that'll be a
And
kickoff
is this-
meeting.
I didn't see
So-
anyone's specific name, like in charge of current goals.
That's because Phyllis, when we had that, you were there, we wrote all their names in. I have it on the master copy after the last
Ah,
meeting.
okay,
Everybody picked the sections they wanted to do,
okay.
based on their experience, and except for Bobby D, who wasn't here, but he's the sewage master, so we gave him that one anyway.
Right, makes sense.
So let me just ask another question. So what's gonna happen then is the focus groups are gonna meet with volunteers, and they're gonna make a monthly report back at your workshop.
Right.
Okay. and
In
then
front of the
you're gonna-
public.
And then you're gonna take it up again at your regular meeting.
Correct. And hopefully we'll get through 2 or 3 sections in a workshop, and then that'll come up to the regular meeting. But focus groups, we don't know how many volunteers we might have at this point in time that will support a focus group. And if it's just going to be the commission, then we'll just do it on workshops here.
Has anyone signed up yet?
No, because we're having our first kickoff on the next
Oh.
workshop. Last one was planning, get volunteers, figure out how to do it, build the template, get it out to them, and then the next one will do a little kickoff with PowerPoint that you're looking at. I'll find the timeline and other things in there and roll that out.
And then at the next meeting, we'll know who's in charge of each of the goals.
If you would have paid attention, you would know who was in charge the other time.
I came late.
I did. Thank you for admitting you were late, Phyllis. One demerit.
But since she was honest, let's give it back.
Yeah, we'll give it back to her. Okay, honesty does get you.
Phyllis, you were what, 1 minute late?
No, she,
No, I was good 15 minutes.
8.5.
Chasing the dog or something or other.
I've never even
Way
worked
later
those
in the
two.
borough.
any other?
Yeah, please. Special events, so I'm trying to look at this list of conditions where it's required and see other things where it would be potentially imposed. So the sale or service of merchandise, food,
What page?
beverages,
Where you
on
at?
page 7.
Okay.
Number 5, at the top of the page, toward the top of the page. Skip to the end of the sentence, where otherwise prohibited by ordinance, which it also says again in number 6. So, Tony, if you could just break down for me, or any of you, I'm thinking, is that based on the approved uses of the properties? So if you wanted to have, I'm thinking about some of the different things that go on in our community. The fishing derby at the Pike County Park is held on public land, right? It's our county park, and they do sell food. So they would be required to get a permit under this ordinance, the way it's written?
Would they be required to get a permit? I think that depends on whether they meet all
Well, I don't read this as saying you have to do one, it says where one or more. So any of these things, if you impede traffic, or if you,
Then
you
they'd be
require
required to get a permit.
services.
Right, if they're gonna impede traffic, they would be required to get a permit.
So if they're going to sell food on the site, and there normally is not food sold on the site, then that would require a permit.
Under this ordinance, yes.
So the Festival of Wood
Yes.
takes place on public property, they'd be required to get a permit. And so no matter what kinds of things we have going on, conditions would always be set by the code enforcement officer alone. So we're asking him to set conditions on a really wide range. We're asking him to set them by himself. There's not a body, and there's not an appeal process. And we're also requiring that these permit applications go 90 days ahead. So you're talking about an assembly of people, which often happens in response to something that happens in our world or our country within a relatively short time frame. So in order to have a public assembly, which is normally something that's protected by our constitutional rights, you would require that they give you 90 days advanced notice in order to do that. That's a pretty long period of time to hold something out there that really may not have any impact in particular. But the way this is written, they would have to do it anyway. Any group at all that sells food would be required if they have a trailer or a van. So Tony, you spoke specifically about the Scouts. And I know that our Pike County Park has oftentimes been used by scouting groups. And they do come with trailers, they do come with vans, they do put up what could be called a stand, or always required, right? So if they're selling food, or even if they're just bringing a trailer onto the property, onto a public property, that's not normally zoned for that, now you're saying they have to pay a permit fee.
I'm not saying it.
Well, this ordinance, I'm trying to ascertain, this ordinance, the way it's written, would then
Don't look at
require,
me and say I'm saying it, because I'm not saying it.
okay,
The proposed ordinance
the
is.
proposed ordinance, I'm asking you to help me ensure that my understanding, the way I read
Right,
this is.
special events,
Correct.
and I'm just gonna say it again. This is a special events ordinance that's been proposed. Special events have always been handled directly by the Board of Supervisors, without necessity of involving the code enforcement officer other than having him process the application.
Those are usually special events that are limited in scope. I don't
Right.
believe that the Festival of Wood, which takes place entirely on Gray Towers' property, ever came to the Board of Supervisors asking for a permit, nor were
Well,
they
Great
required.
Towers does give us a list of events at the beginning of the year.
But they never came in and
No,
had
they sent us a
conditions
list.
set or paid
No.
permit fees.
And we've never charged,
And the Pike County Park as well, being
we've never
another,
really charged a fee. We give an approval for the event.
you give them an approval, blanket approval for all their events.
Now, what about some demonstration at the courthouse? Would that be
Well,
considered?
that would be in the borough, not the township.
That's the borough. But traditionally, what happens is that if you want to have a picnic, so to speak, okay, or a car wash in the parking lot, or the Scouts want to have, or the Girl Scouts want to have a cookie sale, or the Boy Scouts want to have a popcorn sale, or if a homeowners association wants to use the room for women's quilting, or for an association meeting, is that the application would come into the office, either to the secretary or to the zoning officer, and that it would be processed by the board.
And of course, that would be absolutely appropriate when you're specifically talking about the township's property. But this is talking about any public property.
Right.
So it wouldn't matter where, it certainly wouldn't be limited in
Yeah,
scope
and I
by
think
any
that's,
means.
I think you have a valid concern.
Yeah, I just think that this certainly would affect a number of organizations and activities that normally do not come to the township for permission because they're happening entirely outside of the township's purview, and they're not impacting the township as a body in terms of liability.
I think the focus here is an event that would somehow interfere with pedestrian or vehicular traffic. And so, I don't know how you word it, maybe the wording needs to be looked at a little bit more, but I think that was the focus of the special event thought process in the ordinance. But as you point out, when you have, this could be the Boy Scouts in the parking lot.
I think section 4 can override just about any of that, allowing the use of common sense for supervisors if somebody comes before them as well.
Well, see, here's the thing, though. The way the ordinance is set up, and I think you touched on this, Rachel, the way the ordinance is set up is the application goes to the code enforcement officer, and he's actually issuing a permit.
And the special events committee is comprised of the roadmaster and the planning commission. But the conditions are being set by the code enforcement officer by himself. And I understand why you would go 90 days if you need the planning commission to act on this, because if the application comes in one day after your meeting, it's gonna take you 2 weeks just to have the next meeting, where you might come up with questions. But I think in terms of an assembly, where you're literally talking about people walking down the road, that may be, especially if it's something that's regarding, I'm thinking about things like the walks that we've had, if they're not particularly impacting traffic because we don't have, a lined road on that area, and the traffic, can go around them without a great impact.
I'm just trying to remember.
90 days is a long time.
Not to interrupt you, Rachel, I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to remember, I think the only applications that we have that are impacts are like the runs and the walks. And most of the impact is on the state highway, so we require them to get a PennDOT encroachment permit. There's only one little township encroachment permit that was needed, I think, for the Foxtrot, which really just goes through one little section of the
Of the
township, yeah.
But this ordinance, this proposed ordinance, the way it's written, will cover events that have not previously been covered or required the township's, supervision or purview. Gray Towers does the pictures for the prom, and they handle the traffic themselves, and yeah, they do impact the traffic in that area for sure. I'm just thinking of some of the things that I've seen happen that, may or may not fall under this, and thinking about things like the fishing derby, and, the Raptor Center is right there. I don't know that there's any time that the Raptor Center, wouldn't say that there's a potential for a safety issue when they're dealing with their birds of prey. And yet, so now every single time they're doing a display, you would be requiring them to do a permit and a permit process for it. I just think there's some things that maybe we didn't realize.
Well, what about like a poker run being handled by like the Humane Society? Would that be considered?
It's easy, it's difficult to try to put this into words, and I think the intent is a good one as far as obstructing, delaying, or interfering with traffic flow. But, maybe it needs some additional.
Well, it does, and without having a list of all the reoccurrings, we don't track previous, it's difficult to see which ones the township.
Right, because we.
And so that's
really-
why we're gonna ask Sean, what have we
Yeah.
done and how do we do it?
Yeah, really, in the past, and I've only been here since I think 2012, 13, but past, there hasn't been a lot of applications for large special events. Usually it's for this building or a 5K walk or a run that might impact a certain portion of the township. But, you know, usually it gets handled, you know, maybe not right away, maybe not as fast as the applicant would like, but it does get handled at the end, and everyone seems to enjoy it.
And I heard Festival of Wood, so we have no coordination with them. Do we know if they're following proper protocols and coordinating with all emergency services around here? We have no involvement or insight into that.
That would be their responsibility.
It is, but they're in our township, and the issue is, it's been brought up to us, public, we don't have enough resources to cover down on everything else, so if they're having is it a 2-day thing or a 3-day thing? I can't remember.
Just a weekend.
Yeah, and they have extra 10,000 people at the Festival of Wood, that's just a high number. And our regular EMS and fire and police aren't able to support them and our general public, there's a knock-on effect. So that's why they're in our township. We have to understand, are they coordinating properly with all the EMS, fire and safety, and police to make sure there is additional coverage for public safety for township residents? That's one of the things that we're trying to look at. So Shahana, when you come in tomorrow, if you can look to see if there's anything in this magical permit manager that shows special events and things that have happened, that would be great.
So it would almost be worthy to have like a,
If we had a list of reoccurring ones
yeah,
that we know
special
that could be
events calendar
grandfathered, yeah. that
that's
we-
already going on.
Yeah, because I know in the past we've gotten, you know, if the National Park Service does something, they'll usually send a letter and say,
Mhm.
you know, we're gonna do this on this date, and, you know, just to let you guys know, we're gonna do this on this date, but.
Is that the National Park Service or is
Yeah.
that the Forestry? Forestry is the Department of
Could be
Yeah.
Euroforestry.
It's the Forest Service,
Interesting.
yeah, Gray covers is the Forest Service. Even Gate, you know, when
Yeah,
they have
Gate.
their annual events, they would fall under this if they were so much as having the bake sales. So there's a lot of events that didn't used to have to come to the township because they were taking place on private property even, that would now be required under this, to come forward. Honestly, I think looking at number 4 with the animals, as you pointed out, I don't think Gate would ever say that being around a horse doesn't have
That's
the
their normal
potential.
business though. I don't think like when they had their fundraiser, like the Horses for Heroes,
Right.
are you like going that route? Like
Yeah.
saying they should have a permit for that?
Well, I'm saying the way this is worded, they might be required to. And I don't know if we want to go that far, is
I
what
don't
I'm
think
saying.
they should have to have a permit for that. That's their normal run of the business with horses. They do fundraising, they are a 501. We all know Foster Hill's a great road to ride.
Well, let's look
But
at
that's
this
their normal
language.
business. Why do
Yeah.
they have to do that?
But look at what the language says there under number 4. Use
I
or
see.
display of animals, skip to only when such use or display could create a disturbance or affect the public safety of persons attending or in the immediate area of the event. So there's no exemption for them under that.
It's their normal business though.
But
And
it
they're
doesn't say
on
that
private
if it's their
property
normal
though, right?
business.
But they're on private property?
I think that's Rachel's point, though.
But, yeah, that's my point. My
It's-
point is it doesn't go to
This is
spot.
overkill.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we could have just said that right in the beginning.
Okay.
You're wasting oxygen, man. The tree huggers are gonna get us. Oh, I'm gonna pay for that one, man.
You're on.
And as it pertains to the fireworks, you know, what level of knowledge does our code enforcement officer have regarding pyrotechnics?
Fire chief.
That's why the fire chief will be working with them. That's why we wrote them.
Fire chief. would be required to do that.
And does the fire chief have a knowledge of setting off? Because you're requiring him to supervise
You
the,
have to ask the fire chief that one.
Yeah, you have to ask the fire chief, but I would have to say that the fire chief is required under the present law to have that knowledge and do that.
Okay.
Under state law, each fire chief has to go through that training.
And the hold harmless is enough to protect the township from any liability. Is that,
For large displays, there'd be a bond
A bond is
for
for,
damages.
you would know. who
Small
to pay.
displays, it would just be hold harmless. Consumer display. You see, what most people don't understand about the Fireworks Act is that prior to 2017, when it was passed, you, as a citizen here in Milford Township, could not purchase aerial fireworks or set them off. But your neighbor who came from New Jersey could. Okay?
Not
He could
legally.
buy them, and he would, with the promise that he would not set them off in Pennsylvania. And of course, you know how that promise went. Okay? But what the new law does is it now allows the vendors love it because it allows them to sell to everyone fireworks. But the problem is that under the new law, the restrictions are on setting them off are much more restrictive than they were under the old law. I mean, you try to set off fireworks when you're not within 150 feet of an occupied space when you live in a community. And they're setting them off in the communities and everybody, without realizing that they're violating state law.
right, well, and
Because the,
there we go with the enforcement issue, right?
the
Like
enforcement
4th of
issue.
July, you have 40 people setting off fireworks in different locations. Which one is the code enforcement officer going to go and see,
That's the one.
right?
Enforcement. I said that.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. You might have one public display, but you have a whole bunch of other individuals who are just doing their thing, who stopped at south of the border when they were coming on 95.
About 30 years ago, Rachel, I made a statement at a public meeting, and I'll never forget it. People were like boo-hooing, but you can make all the laws you want, but if no one's going to enforce them, it doesn't mean it. No obedience.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, I don't even know what they're called, but there's some kind of new, it's like a bomb. I don't even know, you shoot it with a gun and it explodes like a bomb.
A bomb?
It sounds like a bomb.
The explosive
It's a
charge
firework?
that you,
It is not a firework, but
no, it's, they use it in target shooting, it'll explode when you hit it. They use it in some movies and.
Hey, if you're good enough, you can
I'm
take
just
a garbage
asking
bag.
because
Oh,
like
right.
I live next to Malibu Ranch and they had, you know, like last year, this is when I first noticed them, but when they go off, they sound like a bomb is going off.
Sounds like a bomb exploding.
It does. It's very loud
I've seen
and
it.
it's
It's like an
extremely
overgrown
loud. and-
M80 or something?
Like what?
It's like an
It's-
overgrown M80 or?
Oh, it's like 100 times an M80. It's like rattles the windows and everything. But
They banned them up at the firing range. up
Target
there.
ranges. are
Yeah.
big.
Oh, Tannerite.
Yeah.
Yes, it
Yes.
is, it was Tannerite.
And I'm just wondering if, I don't, you know, if there's anything about that, because that was on Milford Township property and, you know, the police said, oh,
Malibu is
they're
Westfall, isn't it?
well, I guess it was
Malibu is
Westfall, it
Westfall.
was on Westfall, but,
No, fireworks ordinance wouldn't deal with
I
it.
wouldn't deal with that. Okay, just curious.
That would have to be a separate statement on.
Yes.
Anything else? We have homework? It's always good to have homework.
Homework it is.
If not, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn. Anybody want to second that?
So good.
I can't.
All in favor?
All right.
Meeting adjourned.
It would have been good.
Came on last year.
Yeah, it's odd that we don't